Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Tom McQuillan. I'm a full-time LabVIEW developer, LabVIEW fanatic. I do too much LabVIEW in my spare time. I have my own LabVIEW YouTube channel, Tom's LabVIEW Adventure, which perhaps some of you know me from. Anyway, in this presentation, I'm going to be going through efficient programming because, let's just click record, because I live my life as efficiently as I can. I don't even turn on my own light bulbs anymore. I get Google to do that when I wake up in the morning, and I have Google to turn on lights and guide me through my day. And the same is true for my software. I don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again. I want to be an efficient programmer. So in today's talk, we're going to be looking at templates, scripting, some random tools I've developed, and I'll briefly mention how we can customize the LabVIEW IDE to give you a couple of ideas of how to do that. But before we get started, I want to give a big community shout out to the LabVIEW community. I put, I think, 9 people on the board here, because these 9 people have directly affected things I'm going to be talking about today. They've done great things for the LabVIEW community, and I'm either going to be showing some of their tools on screen or have directly affected tools that I've created, and I'll be showing those tools on screen. Okay, it's just a few more people to admit here. So hopefully we have the talk from Fabiola and Jörg just now about DQMH. We have Steve Watts for organising VIWeek. We have various actor framework tools from Alan and Sam. We have Q controls from Q or Quentin, and toolkits from the others. So it's at this point I want you to start spamming the comment section to talk about templates, so why you would use a template. Because I came up with a couple of reasons. So templates allow us to work together. So if everyone in the development team is working on a standard template, everyone in the team can share code without having to work out how that code infrastructure actually works. Provided that you have a good template, it's going to save you a lot of time. You don't want to be repeating code over and over again. And then lastly, I've put consistency here. We are going to consistently have is the sound okay for everyone? Yeah. So we're going to consistently have a high quality starting place. Well, I say high quality, it depends on your template, but provided you've worked on that and fixed all the bugs. Let's think of a DQMH module, for example. That's been worked on for years and years, and so there are very few bugs in there. And yet Q has just said it's a good starting point for scripting. And yet we'll be looking at how we can use templates for scripting a little later on. So again, start spamming the comment section about the LabVIEW templates we have access to. So I regularly create VI templates or VITs. I create project templates, which is something which I think the LabVIEW community as a whole needs to pick up a little more. We have the class member VI, and so whenever you right-click a class, you can go to new, invent VI from static dispatch template or dynamic dispatch template. That template just exists in program files, and you can edit it. And I'll be showing that a bit later. We have DQMH module templates and actor framework actor templates. Although for the AF templates, you do need to download another tool. So let's get started with the VI template. Let's just check for any comments. Now, the VI template is probably the first template you create in LabVIEW. And it's really great for things like your CLD exam, where you want to make sure all of your sub-VIs have error handling, they have a custom icon, they have a custom description. And I actually created a new module template, so a new VI template, fairly recently. I was writing a load of driver software, and instead of copy and pasting the same code every time, even just changing the serial command, I created a template and then changed the serial command. I could have improved that further with scripting. However, I just had a few commands I needed to send. So a template was a nice alternative. Okay, we'll just let a couple more people into the meeting. Then to create a new VI from this template, just right-click the VIT, then New From Template. In fact, to create this template, you can just save a normal VI as a VIT. Then you can create new VIs from that template, and as many as you like. But I want to talk about something a bit more interesting. So if we open up to the world of object-oriented programming, you'll know about class member VIs. So things like VI from dynamic dispatch template or static dispatch template. And if you add a quick preview of what might be coming up later in this presentation, notice that the class I'm right-clicking is a DQMH module. But this static dispatch template, I recently upgraded to LabVIEW 2020, and so I went through the routine of changing that template for my environment. Because this is the template you get, where you have a free label saying why the error cluster across, even in the no error case, so that warnings get propagated. Now, although I stumbled over my words there, apparently I've read this message hundreds, if not thousands of times. I don't need to reread it, because all I end up doing is deleting it. Even the error in, error out clusters and that wire, I want that to be brought up, because if I have things like property nodes, or I want to wire something underneath the error cluster, like a reference, well, there's no space where it is at the moment. So this is the current situation before I updated the template, where I right-click a class, go to new, event static or dynamic dispatch. I then end up deleting this comment and dragging this error cluster up. And so that's how I can put things like property nodes or invoke nodes on that error wire. Now, 10 points if you can tell me what the quick drop shortcut I used there was. But instead of deleting that label and moving that error wire up every single time, I instead went into program files. Is someone's mic on there? I instead went into program files. Even if you go into resources framework providers, that's essentially where you're going to find. Okay, that's essentially where you're going to find any VI or any piece of source code that relates to a right-click menu in your project provider or in your project explorer. And so I went into this file location, found the template, and from this template I can delete that label, move that error cluster up, and save it. So Control-Shift-S to save everything. And then go back to my class, then new from dynamic or static dispatch. And you can see that template has been updated. So no longer do I need to delete that comment and move the error cluster. And there'll be links at the end to show you which path directory that's referring to. But anyway, as I was upgrading to LabVIEW 2020, I realized there's another template that I use fairly often, but I have to change all the time. And that's the user-defined test template as part of the LabVIEW unit test framework. So if I play this recording, if I want to create a new unit test or a new user-defined test for this VI, it comes up with this workbench. But I can see the front panel doesn't fit the control, it doesn't fit the block diagram, and the test is always set to pass by default. But if we're following proper TDD or test-driven design and development, that test should fail. So again, I'm going into program files, finding that template. I can click Control-U to clean up that front panel, go onto the block diagram, and clean up the things that just annoy me about this template. So I'm setting the test to fail by default, can then neaten it up by resizing this free label, and making it so that this cluster is auto-sized vertically. Made a wire shorter, and then resize that block diagram by Control-Space, Control-F. I can then save everything. So now if I create a brand new user-defined test, so I create a brand new user-defined test. Oh.
Where's my book job?
It creates with the updated module template that you can see here. And so now my VI, so now this test is going to fail by default, and it's appropriately sized for the diagram. Okay, I'll periodically be checking the chat window, so post any questions there. Although my PC seems to be a bit slow. Okay. Okay, so there we looked at the VI templates. But now let's look at project templates. Because a lot of my projects are split into, well, a lot of my applications are split into several different projects. Because a lot of my applications are plugins, and so I need to be able to support multiple projects going into a single application. And so that means that every application I make, I need to create a separate project, which is a launcher VI, which essentially launches a splash screen, loads modules into memory, launches the main controller, closes the splash screen, it then closes the launcher. So instead of writing that code every single time, I created a project template. So I click Create Project, I go to Tom, then Tom's launcher. Then I can fill in various details here, like project name, project path, in this case will be a delete me path, and then finish. And this is going to spit out a project. Now this project is already working. I'll show you a few of the methods here. If I open up the launcher and run this, you can see that the splash screen fades into view, it then fades out, and then the code stops. And then on the block diagram, it's not a complicated piece of code. However, it's a piece of code I've had to create multiple times. And I shouldn't have to do that. Instead, I created a template, and I just run that template a couple of times. Well, once for each application. And so on the screen here, you can see it's a simple VI that runs through a list of states in an enum, and every state has a different method that's in the class. Again, I'm using a class or an object on the block diagram here because I'm lazy and don't want to have to create a type-defined cluster, wire that around and wire it into all of my methods. Instead, I use the class template. Okay, I'll just let a few more people into the meeting. Okay, unfortunately, Microsoft Teams has frozen on my end. Can you give me a thumbs up? Nice, okay, double thumbs up. So I'm still good. We have about 80 or 90 people on the call. That's probably why Teams is freaking out on me. Okay, this is where Jörg is going to get excited because I'm going to now show one of his application templates. Because the demonstration I just showed you was for a very small project which could launch a VI from file, but there wasn't really much going on. However, on the screen here you can see the HSE full-featured application template. And if you look at the project, there are lots and lots of libraries, lots of classes, lots of reuse libraries. And right at the bottom, you'll see a startup VI, as well as some build specifications. So, as a demonstration, I created this into a project template. So I took all of that source code and placed it into project templates, which you'll find in your LabVIEW directory. So project templates, source, HSE, and I just put all of the source code in there. Now, to tell LabVIEW where that source code is and to give that template some pretty pictures like the HSE logo and maybe a description of what that template is for, you have to write a metadata file, which is an XML file. So I created one here called hse.xml. And you can see that the Delacorp DQMH metadata file is here, and there are others that you can essentially copy and paste from, so you're not in the dark. But essentially, that metadata file, we can give it a title, HSE application template, a description, some keywords, and where that project actually exists. So it exists within HSE, a source code file, and then it's called template.lavview project. And then I even added the little HSE logo, so I could be reminded of Jörg when I use it. And so by creating just that XML file, which you can see was only maybe 15 lines, and actually of that 15 lines, I copied all of them from another meta file, and then just changed the details. I'm able to add something to the create project wizard, and then from there, it spits out a project. However, that can be a lot of work, and really we don't want to be rummaging around program files, even if it's just the LabVIEW templates or project templates file. And so I've been thinking about creating a little wizard which we can create LabVIEW project or create project template wizard. However, I haven't got around to that. But if that would be useful, let me know. Because I think that this is a really powerful tool that a lot of people would use. However, are a bit freaked out at having to write your own XML file and knowing where to put your items in program files. Okay, there's one more I'll just let into Teams. Okay, good. We have a nice number. I think it's still about, we have over 90 now, 95 people on the call. Okay, so what other templates do we have? Let's have a look at a DQMH module template. So we've just had an excellent presentation by Jörg and Fabiola about DQMH 5. And so I'm assuming most of the people on this call have either used DQMH or know the general principle of DQMH, of that it's an asynchronous framework where you can launch different modules and send messages between those modules. And when you download DQMH, you're given two shipping templates, a clonable template and a singleton template. A singleton template just means you can launch that module exactly 0 or 1 times. The clonable template means you can launch that module n number of times. You can have multiple instances of that module. And so you're given these two by default. I've been using the MGI panel manager very heavily recently, so I downloaded their templates and added those. I've also been using my own custom template. And so Fabiola always says if you're DQMH, well, the first thing she says, you can have all of your money back if you don't like it. The second thing she says is just create your own custom template. If you don't like the shipping examples, create your own. The scripting tools will still work so long as you don't break names or break the labels. Okay, so I went into Tools, Event Core, DQMH, create DQMH module template. And that's because I wanted an actor framework inspired DQMH module. Because it was only fairly recently I got involved in DQMH. I essentially went state machine, queued message handler, queued message handler, actor framework. And then I was using actor framework for quite a long time. And then I got involved in DQMH fairly recently. But there are lots of things that I enjoy about actor framework that just weren't available. And so my wish list was, when the calling actor stops, I want nested actors to stop by default. So when I'm talking about nested actors and calling actors, I'm talking about this tree hierarchy that you might have with the actor model. So when you're launching asynchronous systems, a caller will launch multiple nested actors. A nested actor, so every actor is going to have one caller. The actor might have several nested actors. And an actor is just a loop or a DQMH module. Next, I want to be able to dynamically launch n number of modules. Okay, because in DQMH you can launch n number of a static number of modules, because all of those messages need to be registered. However, in Actor Framework, so long as something inherits from the actor class, you can launch it. And I sort of wanted that behavior in DQMH. I want the modules to have testable methods. So there is the DQMH tester, where you can test all of the functionality. But if I'm writing test routines using the LabVIEW unit test framework, I want all of those methods to be a bit more concise in individual VIs. And then here are the big ones. I want to be able to reuse common messages. So all messages from the caller to the nested module, like stop module, show panel, hide panel, show block diagram, and I've added a couple more. If I have 20 modules, every one of those modules is able to do these things. And so I want to be able to share that message. I don't want to have to send individual messages to each individual module. I just want to use one message, essentially in a for loop. Number 5, I want to reuse common abstract messages or broadcast messages. So from nested modules to the calling module. So module did init, module did stop, the alias, whether that changed, if an error occurred. So I want to reuse those abstract messages. And the very last but most important thing is, despite all of this, I still want it to be a DQMH module. And there are reasons for that later. And so to fulfill my wish list, I created a template where during a module did init, I'm making a register of all of these nested modules. Even in the exit case, I can send a stop message. Okay, so number 1, nice and straightforward. Number 2, I want to dynamically launch lots of different modules. Well, I can open up a module from a file. I could use the call by reference function, or I could wrap up this module in a class and use the LabVIEW class default value. Either way, I want to go from a file path into a DQMH module. And I've put an asterisk on the second one because that's the option that I went with. I want the module to have testable methods. Okay, so I've just changed the module data to be a class, and that class has methods, which is just to test the individual units. Next, I want to reuse common messages, so from caller to nested. For here, I've created a very, very shallow layer of abstraction. We then used dynamic dispatch for stop module, show panel, hide panel, show block diagram, and a couple others. In then number 5, I want to reuse abstract messages, so from nested to caller. Here, I'm actually having the calling actor create those user events, then pass those user events to the nested module. Then to still be a DQMH module, the first criteria is that it passes the DQMH module verification, and it should be able to obviously update its tester still, and I should still be able to use the core functionality that comes with DQMH. I don't want to lose any of that. Okay, so I created this custom template. And now let's see some of the features of this custom template. So I have a module here called root module, or root API. So I'm going to run its tester. You can see that this tester looks very similar. It's a bit different, but I've made it so all of my modules now have an alias, and this is really great for debugging. So I've called it root level module, and I can run it, and it's added to a list of launched modules. I can do things like show panel, hide panel, show block diagram, and so I haven't lost any of that functionality. But you'll see that the template front panel looks different. I can now open a DQMH class from file and launch it. And it's added to it, the register here. In fact, I'm going to spam that button and launch it multiple times. You can see I've launched an extra 9 modules there. And this drop-down menu, these are all common commands that I can send to the nested modules. And these modules could have been anything. I loaded it from a file. And if I stop the calling actor, the nested actors stop as well. Okay, let's have a look at the module itself. You can see there's a class there in the Project Explorer. But let's have a look at how I am launching these modules. So if we go into just the launch event, notice how, where's my cursor? I have a file path going in, and then coming out, I have an object. Okay, so I'm using the factory pattern here to dynamically call or create an object from file. Then I'm passing that object some data. And so typically in Actor Framework, when we're launching an actor, we might pile data into the actor which we're about to launch. And I'm doing exactly the same thing here. Though here I'm passing in some user events I want this nested module to use. Even I'm using the start module. Now I hovered over the output here just to show you that the clonable broadcast events output, that is still there. However, I'm already defining that nested module to use all of these user events. And this is a cluster of user events, and this will still work with the tester. So all of the standard user events will still work. And I could still wire this up to the register for events function if I was defining some more announcements or broadcasting some new events. But because I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary here, I don't need to wire it. Okay. Okay, so once we've launched this module, we'll then be going into module did init. And when we go into module did init, that module has actually returned some data in the form of an object. Then we can take that object and then add it to a register. And so I'm talking about objects here, but really it's just a cluster with some data. It's got an ID in it and a few other bits. So I've added it to this register, then at the end of my application, when I'm closing down, I can take that register and then stop all plugins. And then now I'm just going to filter through the different cases that I have in the message handling loop to show that all of the methods do a very specific thing. And because all of these methods are encapsulated into individual VIs, they become much easier to test with things like the unit test framework or other test kits. And now the last test I'm going to do is using the module validation. I'm going to select this template, run at the validator, and you can see that it still passes because I'm only adding functionality. I'm not changing any labels, so I'm not doing anything that will break the core functionality of DQMH. Okay, I'll just check for any comments. Okay, Teams will update when it updates, I think. Okay, so I can see there have been quite a few comments there. Okay, I'll come back to those comments, or perhaps if someone experienced with DQMH can answer some of those questions, that would be greatly appreciated. Although I see one here, Tom McQuillan, are you separating specific broadcast events from the common ones? Yes, I am. Although they're being used together. And so the calling actor or the calling module and the DQMH tester, they will both know that a module was initialized. Okay, so when I was developing this template and starting to use it, the question that kept crossing my mind was, why am I using DQMH? Why not just use Actor Framework, which I'm knowledgeable about, I have a YouTube series about, I know the ins and outs, I know the mechanism, but why not use Actor? And there are a couple of reasons. The DQMH module, despite me adding a few very shallow class hierarchies to it, is all self-contained. And so I can take this module, put it into a folder, and put it onto another PC, and it will just work. A few caveats of that is DQMH needs to be installed, but it's not referencing anything outside of its own module. And this module is so much easier to package into a patch project library than an Active Framework module. I did a few projects where I was using Active Framework and packing the actors into PPLs. But just with the very nature of Active Framework, where you have quite a deeply nested stack of child actors as well as deeply nested actors, it just becomes a bit of a dependency nightmare. Whereas DQMH, everything that module needs is in the module itself. And it's a lot easier to debug. And also, all of the benefits of DQMH are still valid. So I have the tester, I have message scripting, and it's very straightforward. So I am adding a couple of classes to the background, but the end user doesn't really need to know how those classes work or what they are doing. There are some downsides. There's quite a lot of code duplication. So instead of defining all of this behavior in just a parent module, I'm defining it in every single module, which creates a lot of code duplication. And also the size of my template on disk is quite a lot larger than the standard DQMH module, DQMH clonable module. So the clonable module that ships with DQMH comes out at about 575 kilobytes, and my module is 915 kilobytes, so about a 60% increase. However, some counterpoints to that, all of that code duplication, that's not a manual process. I'm just going to Tools, Delacore, or DQMH, Module, Create New Module. And that scripting tool creates all of this extra code for me. So it's not something that I actually have to do. The code can be built into a PPL much, much easier. And really, for my applications, it doesn't matter that there's a bigger code base, because my applications tend to run on performance desktop machines where this space isn't actually a concern. And the load time isn't noticeable. And yeah, there's a comment that I've just seen out the corner of my eye of wondering whether the PPL file size is prominent importance in our LabVIEW world. No, I mean, the PPL size doesn't matter to me. It might matter to applications where we're more conscious on space. Now, I want to talk about a secret feature that I have in my DQMH module, my template. And that's the ability to send announcements and commands to my calling actor or calling module and nested module. So I have two templates in my DQMH module. You'll see that they're nested in another class called announcement action and command action. And so I'm using the terminology of an announcement is a message to the calling module, and a command is a message to the nested module. And the template is used to respond to those messages. Now, I built in this little mechanism because if I just want to update the status or status bar of another module, either my nested module or my calling module, I don't really want to make a full-featured event-based messaging system. I just need a VI that does something. So I created these two items, and you could right-click those templates and new from template, but we're going to do something a bit more exciting than that. Instead of right-clicking new from template, we'll look at scripting with templates. And so I've put up the LabVIEW scripting tools here, the main VI scripting functions, which you need to enable by going to your VI server section of options, even enabling scripting. Also, I highly recommend you download the hidden gems in VILib, which comes with its own VI server and scripting functions, such as the find object by label function, which will be featuring a bit later on. So anyway, the way that I use these scripting tools in my development is I created another drop-down menu in my tools menu. So you can see here we have the Delacore one, and we use that for DQMH and creating modules. I then have a custom one just above it called DQMH message scripting. Then from there, if I select Get Command List, it brings up this dialog box where I can create a big list of commands, big list of announcements, and define some data. And the reason why I've done it like this is I don't want to, I'm not one for documenting my code. I'm not very good at sitting down and writing documentation and labels. And so this tool is going to create all of that documentation for me and actually save it to a file. So when I go to write my programming manual, I have all of the details of all of the messages there. I can then just copy and paste. Okay, let's see that in action. So here I'm going to go to Tools, and then down to DQMH Message Scripting, Get Command List. And then select my DQMH module, which is root. And I can select between announcements and commands, and then add a command. And actually, when I fill out this data, notice how those colors change. This is the reason why I put Q on that community thank you, because this is an example of a queue control, where as I type in data, the background turns from red to green, etc. And it's just a really neat implementation. It also makes sure I put in enough documentation. So here I'm saying what I should be doing with the string I'm passing through. And I can save that command, and it turns it back into an indicator. I could go into announcements and create a new announcement. So an announcement, again, that's from your nested module up to your calling module. And I'm calling this announcement just announcement because I just wasn't feeling very creative. If I give it a detailed overview, and this time I'm going to send a string, then a tab separated I32. And I'm telling future Tom that I'm doing that. So string tab I32, save announcement. And then again, that gets saved to a configuration file that I can pick up later. I then want to create those messages. So I go into the scripting tool I created, select my DQMH module, and click OK. And now this is going to take all that information and plug it into those templates I showed you earlier. Okay, so they finished scripting. And so here you can see that documentation was transferred to things like subdiagram labels, constants. That scan from string function, that was auto-populated and more nodes were added. So I've finished that functionality. I can now do the same for the command. We're going to pass that string straight through. And I guess I could add some more scripting here to delete the scans from string if it's not needed. But essentially, I can very quickly create these methods, fill out the functionality, click save, and they will just work, which is really neat. Okay, let's see them in. Well, that's playing the same thing again. Let's see them in action. So I'm going to now launch a DQMH module, one from my template. So I'll launch it from the tester. Then from the tester, I'm going to send a command now. So I called the command open dialog. If I can give that command some data in the form of a string saying, hello world, send a command, and that dialog box pops up. Okay, so that was very straightforward. Okay, so now to test the announcements, I need to create a nested module. So we'll see that in action now. I'm going to select a file path for a DQMH module and launch it. And then I'll go into the module to address, and then just open its front panel. So now I'm going to send that announcement, which I've just called announcement, and I gave it some data of a string, even a tab, even a number. So I'll type in a string, hello world, even a tab, even 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and make the announcement. Even I get that dialog box. And if you look in the background at the tester, you can see that an announcement was made. So the tester is still keeping track of things that are happening. Okay, so now let's have a quick flyby of seeing where these actually live. So when a command is received, or an announcement is received in this case, I'm just going into a simple case structure, and this is where we see the VI that we created via scripting. And the same for the command, although the command is a bit more complicated because we also have reply data, which is what this cluster here is doing. But In command received, again, it's just a case structure where we have the open dialog VI that we created earlier. And notice we can do things with scripting like changing the icon to the name. Cool. So scripting with templates. Scripting is just a really fantastic thing. It saved so much time. It's actually consumed a lot of my time because I see it more of a hobby now. And so if anything, I'm doing more LabVIEW because of scripting. But that's just my issue, I think. But essentially, with scripting, the way I would get started is systematically going through what I need the scripting tool to do. So you can see some of these modules which I copy and pasted directly from the scripting tool I've just shown you. I need to change the case structure subdiagram label. I need to change the format string, change the next states, change the state label, etc. So these are all things which I would do manually, except I get LabVIEW to do it programmatically. And you can see I've got some example of some scripting functions on the screen here. So if I want to programmatically create a brand new VI, I can just use the new VI scripting function, even wire in a template. Even there are various methods that you can do with this new VI, like change the icon. You can see whether that VI is part of a library and get that reference, even add things to that library. So when I'm creating these messages, I need to add that VI to a class, and that class is part of a library. And really, a lot of the time when I'm doing this, so there's another comment there. If an OO programmer, there's a icon API too. Yeah, if you go into hidden gems, there's a section on the icon editor. But a lot of the time, I just need to get a reference to something I want to change in my template, such as this constant here. Let's say string label. I want to get a reference to this constant. And so I wire that into find object by label, cast it to a string constant. I can then perform methods like change its value or even change it to an indicator. And there's a very simple example I've created here because I'm slowly working on a What's New in LabVIEW 2020 video, and I wanted to show case structures with lots of different cases. Now, I wasn't going to do that manually. I can use scripting to do that. So here I have two different structures. I'm going to get a reference for this case structure, add 40 frames to it, and change the frame names. So you can see that these structures only have one case each. So only one. I run the scripting tool, and now these structures have 40 cases each. Although for the event structure, that doesn't work so well because I was indiscriminately creating these event cases without seeing whether they were valid or not. But I could make them valid if I created various controls for them. Even here, I'm showing hidden gems in LabVIEW, and that's where you would find the that's where you would find the get reference via label. Okay, there's a statement here from Darren. Yeah, so Darren's absolutely right. You don't need to be an object-oriented programmer to use the icon editor API. It's just a open and save API. It's very straightforward. The next thing I want to show is scripting functions for scalability. Now, this is actually something which I need to buy Jörg a drink for, because I was looking around his application template and wondering, okay, how can you cope with having n number of subpanels? Because in my applications, I need lots of nested subpanels, and I don't know exactly how many subpanels there will be. So instead, I can use the traverse for GObjects VI wire in the VI reference and look for everything that's a subpanel. It will then return just an array of those subpanels. I'm then using the MGI panel manager to just encapsulate that reference into an object, which I'm saving into a map and passing out into the rest of my application. And so it doesn't matter if I go back to a particular user interface and add a couple more subpanels. So long as I change the label names, they'll get added to this map and the rest of the application will work just fine. Okay, we're coming up to 6 o'clock, which is probably a good place to be, because I'm going to introduce the topic of customizing the LabVIEW IDE. But seeing as I've already done a presentation all about this at GDevCon 2, I'm just going to show you essentially a highlights reel from there. And this is where Jörg needs to watch out, because he'll be featured again. So in terms of customizing the LabVIEW IDE, we can do things like having custom project providers. So we have different icons here and drop-down menus. We can do scripting. So I'm going to take a photo or an image here, and I'm going to programmatically create, I think, 255 VIs and change the icons of all of those VIs and map them together to create this image. Even just to show you that these are all individual VIs, I'll highlight them. You can see the border. I can open the icon editor here. And from the icon editor, I'll do some dental work on him, fill in one of his teeth. And you can see that this image has now updated. I can have custom quick drop shortcuts. So whenever I type in GitHub and Control-G, goes to my GitHub page, and you can find everything from this demo there, github.com/Tom's LabVIEW extensions. And you can change the LabVIEW menus as well. So I created one called File, then Return to Presentation. And so you can see the full talk I did at GDevCon for customizing the LabVIEW IDE. If you just go into the GDevCon YouTube channel. And I see that Darren has just commented, don't wait for LabVIEW R&D to implement features, do it yourself. I assume that's how his comment finishes. Because there are some tools which I've written which really speed up my application development and make me a much more efficient programmer. Things like debugging. I like to have debugging disabled just so I can see how my software is going to behave and its look and feel when it's deployed. However, sometimes there's a bug and I need to track it down using breakpoints or highlight execution, etc. So I made this right-click menu where I can right-click a class or even any item here, and then enable or disable debugging all or individual ones. Also, this is something I think just should be included in LabVIEW, maybe LabVIEW 2021, of being able to replace a property node with an invoke node or vice versa. Because you have that functionality for a for loop and a while loop, you can right-click and swap between them, but not for property nodes or invoke nodes or even constructor nodes. But this is something which I have to do quite a lot, especially with scripting where you have lots of items. Yeah, Darren's just mentioned there is a quick drop shortcut to swap between them. But it's just a simple right-click, then top of the menu, convert is faster. I've also created a couple project providers. Now, project providers are awful. You definitely shouldn't use them. However, they do save me a lot of time. So I've created one called a documentation tool, which I presented at the last CLA summit. And with this documentation tool, I can right-click the icon in my project or right-click something in my application, open up the documentation tool, and it allows me to do things like this. I can double-click and change the icon for all of the items selected in my documentation tool, so I can see if they're all complete and following the same API. I could run VI Analyzer directly from this tool, and if there's a missing description, I can just write one in the box and it will update. And then lastly, on my YouTube channel, I do have a playlist about customizing the LabVIEW IDE, where you can do things like right-click menus, integrating into the LabVIEW menus, then creating quick-drop shortcuts. And so if you head over to my YouTube channel, you'll see it there. That's great. So really, that's most of what I had to go through, and I'm sorry I haven't been keeping up with all of the comments. I can see there's been quite a few, but I haven't had the privilege of having someone else monitor them for me. But I do have quite a few links here. So all of these links, you can just Google the title. So for example, for VI templates, if you just Google VI templates in LabVIEW, you'll get to this link. So if you want to take a screenshot of this slide, please go ahead. And at the bottom, I've added the paths for your class member template and your unit test framework user-defined test template path. And then there's a couple more resources here which I've put on for scripting. So there's a link to an article I think Fabiola de la Cueva wrote, and then one from National Instruments. And then regarding IDE extension, your developer environment extension, there's my YouTube channel, there's the talk I did at GDevCon 2, and then there's also forums. So if you want to use project providers, and please be prepared to get frustrated, go into the LabVIEW project provider framework forum. There's the right-click menus, ni.com/LV menus, and then the NI forum for quick drop enthusiasts. However, one important note, project providers are unsupported, unstable, and a bad idea in general. That being said, I want to play devil's advocate and make sure you use them on someone else's machine before your own, or better still, a virtual machine. But they are pretty cool. And I might get told off by Darren for saying that. But yeah, they can save you a lot of time. Okay, I'm going to thank each one of you, every one of you. I think at the peak there are about 90 of us here, so thank you all for listening.